Welcome back, everyone, to the On Water Podcast, episode 19. We are so close to the end of season 2, and it has been a long ride, but we are here, and I'm so excited because there's a lot of people on the podcast today. There's a lot of us. This is the first time we've had more than just one person be a guest for the podcast, and so I'm just going to quickly introduce my people here. So we have a returning guest. She's been here
like that.
multiple times. We have Ruth back here on the podcast, and we have two special brothers here with me, Craig and Cylas. Yay! All four of us are here today because we are all worship leaders here at our church, and we're actually filming at the church today. And we're all doing worship leadership together for our church. And just thought there's a lot more to this, but we're going to kind of talk about our worship leadership and what's been going on for the past kind of 2.5 weeks. But before that, I want to give an opportunity for Cylas and Craig to introduce themselves in whatever way that you want to introduce yourselves.
All right, Cylas first.
Sure.
And that's
Do you want
Craig's
like a
introduction.
backstory? Like how did I know?
Just who are you,
So,
Cylas?
Yeah. So I'm you guys know me. I'm Cylas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to introduce myself.
How would you identify yourself?
So married. I have 2 kids.
Oh.
I have 2
Sorry.
kids. I've been here at Queensway for, I believe, since 2014, so almost 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
I've been in the team since 2015.
Oh, so
think.
first year in. You
So
said
Wow.
worship
Wow.
immediately.
No, like a year. I waited like a year
Okay.
before I joined the team, actually.
Okay.
Bro, you're showing your age.
So,
You're showing your
yeah.
age.
No, I started
Okay,
when
we
I was
already know
12.
Cylas is old.
Started when I was 12. That's
Alright.
when I was
Mm.
moved here.
It's
So,
Mm.
yeah, and then like 10 years, fast forward, then we're here now. Like,
Okay.
who would have thought, right? Like,
That's true.
definitely didn't think that I would get here or like be in this capacity. Really, in terms of like the worship team, I'm always happy being in the background. Like I've done that for a long time. I've never asked for anything else.
Right, right.
Really, or never requested anything. So yeah,
So you never expected yourself to worship lead at Queensway?
no,
Really?
never,
That wasn't
not
a,
anywhere.
That wasn't a desire for you at all?
No, no.
But don't you do music like even outside of worship?
No, I used to before I moved to Canada. So kind of like a long story for me, but yeah, I never did. I didn't even sing before I moved to Queensway.
Really?
So yeah, so I only started singing when I joined the team here at Queensway.
Wow.
Okay.
So yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you know what? Let's go to Craig, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into individual stories. But Craig, please, brother,
A little
introduce
much
yourself.
Closer story to Cylas. Like, Cylas and I were classmates back in the Philippines, music college. So
What?
yeah, we are.
So
I did not know that.
You
I
guys
invited
went
him
to-
to Queensway when he moved
Yeah.
to.
You guys
yeah,
went to
when-
music
we
college?
we
He
attended the
mostly
same.
did.
Wait, what do you mean
No,
by
no, no.
mostly did?
So did you not come to the
you know
classes?
You know the term skipping school. No,
Ah,
no,
okay.
but he's
Cool
a good
guy.
one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so me and Cylas were classmates. I think you were ahead of me, right?
I think I was. Yeah.
Ahead of me, like
I think
one
I was,
year, but
I've
we
been
were
there for a year. Yeah.
some of the subjects we were like together. And then,
Wow. Wait, is this
He's one of the cool
Cool
guys.
kids?
Yeah, cool, yeah.
No,
Because they
guys.
were the
we were in the same classes because I had to do them again.
Silas? No, I can't.
yeah, my story
Okay.
revolves around
Okay.
him. No.
Just
So,
twins.
but I'm
Yeah.
so blessed that I didn't know that Cylas moved to Canada. I just know that Cylas moved out of the Philippines, but I didn't know he was here. So I was attending. Me and my wife. So I'm also married, and me and my wife were like attending another church, and he messaged me like, "Bro, I didn't know you were here in Canada. You
No
want to join?
way.
You want to attend Queensway?" And it was like, "Oh yeah, for sure, we'll check it out." Like, so,
Wow.
yeah. and then
So you came to Queensway because of Cylas?
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
You were
brothers.
a year ahead of him in music school. You know, a year ahead of him here at Queensway, and just
But he's older.
Oh,
No. One more fun fact. Oh.
No
Me
way.
and Cylas, were both born in 1986.
Okay.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
computation for you guys.
Okay.
And we're both born in August
August
Wow.
baby. What day?
First.
11.
Oh, 12.
See?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm different, I'm gonna change the subject.
Anyway.
You're such a youngest child. Like,
I am. I truly am.
I was a pianist back in the Philippines. Yeah, like Cylas, I didn't sing that much. I have a group, which our church they created us like because we're musicians, and then we can like arrange crazy stuff. But I don't really sing in the Philippines. I'm more of like a accessory keyboardist, so I was like always in the background as well.
So you were second keys
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
nice.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'm guessing because also Silas was here at Queensway, right when you started coming here, you were ready to be on worship team.
No, he encouraged me. He was
Really?
like, "Do you want to?" Because he knows that I was what do you call this, in the ministry for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
So he kind of knows what my desires are like to be in the
Yeah.
ministry. I just
Right.
want to be. I
Yeah.
just want to. Me and my wife just want to find a church that we can like serve, like how we serve
Right.
Yeah.
back in the
He knows your
Philippines,
heart
right? Yeah.
behind
Right.
it.
So
Right.
he encouraged me to like do an audition,
Yeah.
Right.
which the audition
there?
that I
Yeah,
were,
Ruth was there.
I met you there for
I
the
We were
first
sitting
time,
together.
Yeah,
and
I
you
was
were like
there.
speaking some like Filipino language.
Oh,
I was like,
yeah,
you were there.
yeah.
I'm not
Oh.
surprised. I'm
So I
not
didn't do
surprised.
The
good
words
in-
that I said were not nice words.
Yeah. No.
The
Sorry,
only
no,
words I know are your kilikili is bajo, which means that your armpit is stinky. But,
Oh my God.
but it makes Filipino people go, oh my gosh, at least you know something in Tagalog.
Yeah.
You know a little bit of everything, to be honest. So.
I mean,
Okay, well then, kind of, you were when Craig was auditioning, you were there. So when did you start on worship team here at Quincy?
2021
2021.
June.
2021 June. So that was almost 3 years ago. So even 3 years ago, you were on the, I guess, judges table.
No. She
no,
was there.
I wasn't at the table. It was, I think
Sulema,
it was
Vanessa.
Sulema, Vanessa, my brother.
Ebbie was there?
He
No.
was.
Oh, was
I
it?
think he was.
Why is
It was,
Ebbie there?
It was Kibbs, Vanessa, Sulema,
Makita?
and no, it was Hazel.
Oh yeah. It was that
was
was
four
the,
of them.
The table I'm thinking about is probably the one that was the following year with Ebby and all of the other ministries like coming together. So 2022, but 2021 would have been them. Yeah, no, I genuinely just had a love for worship and also I don't know, like I like welcoming people.
Right.
People are very nervous during those audition processes, so
Right.
I'm always like, if I can be a friendly face that, I'm gonna lead worship
Yeah,
with
it
these
helps.
people
Right.
one
It
day.
helps.
It
Yeah.
just it calms people down because
Yeah.
if some random girl can come up to you and say your kili kili is bajo and can make you laugh, like you'll forget about the nerves
That's
that you
true.
have about going on stage. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when did you start doing worship and how did you get into where you are now?
oi. Those ones where you're just like, oh, there's a lot.
Now I have to compute.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. I think that, I've always loved worship since I was like a baby. My mom was a choir director at our church when they were missionaries traveling around my parents. But I started being a little bit more serious with it when I was in high school and joined the youth worship team here at Queensway when I was like 15, 16. So I'm 26 now, turning 27. So like 11,
Just
12
like our
years.
age.
Yeah. Just like you guys. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
More closer.
You said
Right.
80, 86, right?
No. 96.
96. Got it. Same here. you know?
Exactly.
No, but I just fell in love with worship, and I felt like I could connect with God most through music. So because of that, like my mom was always musical, my dad was always musical, did that, and from youth worship team, we were given opportunities to go on main, and then I was in a production one year, and Kibbs actually was like, we need a soprano. You auditioned and you sang soprano for ensemble. Try singing this. And then played it a couple times, and I was like, okay, and sang it, and he was just like, okay, cool, like, join the worship team. But I feel as though I properly learned about worship and that kind of stuff as I was on the team, and like learned so much from just being part of like a team with so many people who worship God with excellence. So never really classically trained, but always just was around people who had this like utmost respect and honor for God through worship.
Well, I kind of already knew that, but I wanted them to know. Because genuinely, the one thing that I realized when I was even thinking about bringing all of us onto the pod was, one, I know 0% of Cylas' story, even though we are going to be be worshiping on the same ministry and going to be working together now. I know nothing about what your story has been up till now. I think I know Craig's story. A little bit.
Same group
Exactly. Like we've talked and we've hung out before, so I kind of know. I know Ruth's story very well. But also, like, all of us know each other's story at a very different level. And I kind of wanted to even have a space where we can talk about how we got here and what our experiences was, even in Queensway worship, right? And like for me, I don't even know if you know this, but like I only came to Queensway in 2021. So it's been 3 years now. And before that, I was at a different church, but like I grew up in a Korean church for the first like 18 years of my life. And I was in worship team, very similar when I was like a teen, like 16, 15, 16. And then I think it was 18 or 19. It was a very small Korean church. So I was kind of forced into basically music directing, but also worship leadership for the entire English ministry, like the young adults ministry, for my Korean church. When I was still 18, 19. And so obviously I wasn't very good. And I recognize now, being at Queensway and seeing the standard and seeing what it could be, I now realize, I'm like, dang, that was really bad. But people still worshiped. People still, like it was still worship, and people still received through it and stuff like that. And so I think a lot of like being a part of Queensway worship allowed me to kind of go to the background and see and learn this, like how it could be better, from the things that I already knew. But that's kind of how I started here. And I wasn't even like, I'm just like you, Cylas. I wasn't expecting myself to lead at Queensway. This is the biggest church I've ever attended in my life. So like to think about doing worship leadership here was not something that was in my radar at all. But yeah, I don't know. I think all of us can kind of agree that we don't really expect, like when we go into worship, expecting ourselves to be leaders. Like, I want to go up there to be a leader, to eventually be at that status or be at that level. I think it just kind of happens. I don't know. Yeah. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, 100%. Even before this, right? Probably like a year ago, I was having this same conversation with someone from our team. And she was like, do you want to be, like, do you have a desire to be a worship leader here at Queenston? I was like, no, not really. I was like, our leaders are great. I'm like,
why do we need another one?
Right? Our leaders are great. Like, and I think it's more, like, for me, it's my personality too, because I'm not really that outgoing. And I feel like, for you to be in front of, like, everyone, you have to be, like, you have to be outgoing and things like that. And I'm not really like that, like, personally, except for some instances, when I'm just,
when
I don't know.
Jokester.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely not something that I was expecting. But at the same time, when I started getting, not pushed into it, but, when they were slowly encouraging me to, like, I'll just get a text, say you're leading this.
Oh, the text messages.
Right? So I'll just get a text, say, you're leading, can you lead this song?
Yeah.
I'm like, am I going to say no?
Right. But think,
right? And so I'm like, okay. And because I trust our leaders so much as well, that I feel like if they're asking me to do something, because I trust them, then I'm like, okay, because you're telling me that I can do this, that I should be doing this, then yeah.
I love that, like, there's that, you trust your leader so much that it even like supersedes the doubt that you have in yourself.
Right.
It's like, I don't feel like I can do this, but if my leader sees something in me,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, maybe I can do it, which is also why, like, it's going into a whole thing, but it's also why our responsibilities as like worship leaders of like our young adults ministry is to see those things and tell those people, I see this in you. So even if they doubt themselves, it's like, but I believe in you.
Right.
You know, and it's like, okay, I see that. And that's what you're saying now. It's like, oh, I doubted, but like, if they see it, then it must be something, because I trust them and their relationship with God. And like, if God's talking to them, I might as well say yes.
For sure.
I think it's very hard, like, going back to Jin's question, is like to have a to desire to lead to lead worship, right? I think most of the time God will just call you like in a snap, and like, I'm picking you to lead worship.
Right.
Oh, really?
Right.
It's not. I mean, it's very hard. Like, I'm imagining like I want to be a worship leader someday. It's like maybe I'll go in a different path by then, but it's humbling, right? Because I like everyone's attitude. Like Cylas, he's so humble, like he can lead, but at the same time, me as well. I don't really like my voice when I was singing, because I think I mentioned this to you. Like I can always hear myself. I describe my voice as like a muted trumpet.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
that's why I always describe my voice. But I learned through these years, like, no, you have to be like, you don't have to down yourself every time. Because the first time I lead worship in Hub, I was with you, right? And Kib was like, play the piano. I was like, I didn't audition for piano. Because I gave up. I gave
piano
up
playing.
piano playing already. Because it's a long story, but I stopped playing piano because for some reason, because I was stagnant on my skills already. So I was like, no, I don't want to play anymore. And then Kibs was like, play piano for the Hub. I was like, no, you sure? and then he asked me to lead one song, and I was like, I thought I was just gonna sing like the harmony of it. No, but it was humbling, and then I learned a lot.
But one Kibbs does that. He's Kibway is one of our worship leaders here at Queensway, and he is one to push you and not push you to because he wants to test you, but because he knows you can do it.
Yeah.
And something along the lines of that happened to me actually this past Wednesday for Maine. Last Wednesday for Maine. Because we were singing Waymaker on main service this Sunday, and soprano was melody, and it's a high melody, and I was the only soprano on the set,
Nice.
so the only person singing melody.
I'm so sorry. I was away for the weekend.
Gutty. And so I was the only soprano singing the high melody, and Kibbs, and during the Wednesday practice, Kibbs looked at me and he's like, okay, stop singing falsetto and sing chest voice. And and this is where I needed to repent afterwards, because I looked at Kibbs and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. And he's like, try. And I'm like, I can try, but I'm not hitting it. Like, I was so stubborn of like, I'm not going to hit it. And Kibbs, in his gracious way, as we were leaving, and I was telling him again, like, I can't hit it.
He's always gracious.
Yeah. So he's direct, but also he's so gracious and gentle in the way that he speaks. But he was very honest with me, and he's like, oh, Jin, you can hit it. You're just scared. And I was like, what do you mean, Kibbs? Like, I'm not scared. But he's like, right.
What do you mean, I'm lying.
I'm not scared.
What do you mean I'm lying? I'm not lying.
She's lying.
Literally, he told me, as right before I'm getting to the high note, he's like, you doubt yourself and then you just go falsetto because you know you can hit it in falsetto. And like you do chest, and then right before you go into falsetto, and he's like, if you just go for it and you take enough air and you just run with it, you can hit it. And I had to, and this is where I was lacking trust even in my leadership, where I was like, oh, I couldn't. I told Kibbs afterwards because I practiced at home. I was like, okay, I'll practice at home, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. And then I practiced the next day. I practiced on the piano, and I was singing this song, and I could hit it. It's just,
Yep.
And you were sitting down that time,
and I was
right?
sitting
The
down,
seat?
yeah, and then so on Sunday I went back to Kibbs and I was like, Kibbs, you know what? I stand corrected. Like, you are right. I could hit it. And he's like, yeah. If I know one thing, it's music. And I knew you could hit it. So like, why are you doubting me?
Yep.
Are you questioning me?
Exactly. And I was
I
like, you
didn't
know what?
tell you that.
I needed to repent because I was like, I was so stubborn in what I thought my capabilities were that I did not trust God. I did not trust my leadership to believe that I can be pushed further than where I am now.
Yeah.
And I had to be like, God, like, I'm sorry that I was not willing to say, like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to practice and I can hit it. I just need to practice and be willing to say that, but already like instilling a level of doubt in me where I've already given up. Right. And this is a great transition into kind of what we talked about at the worship workshop. 2 weeks ago, our entire worship team at our church did a workshop together, and us young adult worship leaders, we had a very honest and real conversation about what our leadership is going to look like and what our team is going to look like and what hub worship in general is going to look like moving forward. And I want to stand out and say, like, I really appreciated, Cylas, your comment about your nervousness and being in your head during worship, because I felt the exact same way. And I feel like when we are choosing to lean on our own understanding when it comes to our competency and our capability, we are only able to give what we think that we are, what we are worth.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if you guys have things to say about that.
Yeah, basically, like, for the longest years that I've been playing keys in the Philippines, I was always doubting myself, right? Because I have like so many other pianists that are like better than me, younger than me, like for they're young, but it's still like their skills are like way more far better than me, and I was like always doubting. And then one time, and I was working at a church, and I got hired as a staff musician, and I was in charge of our South campus, and I was they put me in charge of like doing first keys for the main service and also for the youth service. I was like, and in our church is like, it's not just, you're not sticking to just one genre, like every genre you play.
Right.
And then one time, before that, there was this piano teacher that she's very good. I don't know if you met her, like Pastor Esther.
Oh, yeah.
And she was so good. She's classically trained, and when she plays like with emotions.
Oh, yeah.
And she taught me like how to approach a music sheet.
Right.
Then I copied how she studies music, and like just like write shortcut and stuff and one time. And then one time I was like playing it, and then I have all my notes, and then one person came and it was like laughing, and she made fun of how I approach things. It was like, I learned this from my pastor. It was like, so I'm doubting myself from that point, and I was like, what do I really need to do? Like, how to improve myself? Like, what do I have to, like, what's the term? Like, prove. Do I need to prove myself?
Yeah.
Right.
So, going back to the truth of what we were discussing, like, the confidence, I think for me is like, when you focus yourself enough on the talent that you have, you'll lose it all, right? Because my talents are like, compared to, I'm comparing, but it's not negative. We're just telling stories, like, compared to Cylas, like, my talents are like no way closer than Cylas, but for God, it won't stop there, like, because He's gonna give you something, like your story, right? And you're doubting yourself, like, but the moment you trust God in the ministry that He picked you
Yeah.
to come and follow Him,
Yeah.
like, you'll never know, because seek ye first the kingdom of
Right.
God, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's That's so true. Because when I accepted that challenge to handle the South campus, I was so amazed that I can play like first keys.
Right.
Like every time there's a hard piece, like a black music, like wait, what's that? Waymaker. It's so
Yeah,
hard.
like gospel.
Yeah, it's
kinda.
gospel. It's
Yeah.
like, no way I can like hit those keys, but every time I practice, like God help me.
Right.
But at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the things is like there are things that we already know. Like we've been in ministry for a while, and God teaches us things along the way, right? And when we get into a new position or in a new season in ministry, that we kind of like forget about those things,
Right.
and we kind of like, and that's where doubt comes in, right? Like, and I believe just like looking at, if you guys look at where you've been in ministry and where I've been, when I look at myself, I've never, it's not that I've never desired anything, but it feels like a lot of it have been me being put in a position where I didn't expect it, or when I didn't expect it to happen.
Yeah.
That's basically how I started in ministry, because we didn't have a drummer. We had a church of like probably like 1,000 people in the Philippines, and we had like 3 drummers, and all of a sudden on one Sunday we had no drummer.
Oh.
And my dad was a worship pastor at that church, and he knows that I can play drums, so he was like, yo, you're playing drums this Sunday.
Now you know. Now you know. Now you know. When I met Cylas, he was really a drummer.
Oh, really?
And I think I was 14. I was 14 at that time.
Yeah.
So, and it was like straight up, like, I still remember the medley. It was a Ron Canoli medley. Like, whose report will you believe? You
I
shall
love Ron
believe
Canoli.
the
Come
report
on.
of the Lord.
Yep,
And that medley.
yep.
And I just know, because I know the song, I've heard it so much, so I know where all the hits were.
Yeah.
Right.
And things like that. And that's how I started in ministry. So,
Wow.
yeah, just saying that I went there because I wanted to say, you know, like God, when God puts you in a ministry, right? Like, I'm sure we all know this. God puts you in a ministry, or he calls you into something. The only reason why you're in that position, you can be effective in there, is not really because of your talent. Yes,
Yeah,
it's a part
it's
of
not
it,
because of
but because God's grace is upon you during that
Right.
season,
Yeah.
right?
Amen.
That's good.
Like, so even I can be this, you know, your talent can be the same, or like musically, you'd even be better. But once God lifts that grace, right, during that season, like if he's like, yo, you're done with this season, you're done with this
Yeah.
ministry, you might be a better musician at that point,
Right.
but it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I like, with everything that you were talking about, I was reminded of a biblical kind of thing where in the Old Testament with the judges, like a lot of the judges were people that otherwise would be overlooked. So there was a warrior who was left-handed, and oftentimes that was really bad because everybody would be right-handed. So when everyone's taking out their sword, you'd be on the opposite side. But God still used that person to liberate them from a bad king.
Right.
Or, you know, when you look at Deborah, like, she was a woman as a judge over Israel, and it was like, oh, that didn't make sense at that time. Or sometimes there were people who were Gentiles who were also judges. Like, there were so many people who otherwise would be overlooked by several individuals, and God still used them. But the second thing that reminded me of what you were saying was Israel's forgetfulness through what God brought them out of over and over and over again. And I think that there's such an important note that you were saying. It's remembering his faithfulness and remembering the things, which, funny enough, has been the song of our church recently.
Right.
Songs about forgiveness, songs about faithfulness, songs about God's goodness. And I'm even reminded of one song that, like, Cylas, when you lead this song, you lead this song.
With the
Same
rasp.
God.
Yeah.
With the
Oh
rasp.
my goodness. Because when you like say like I'm calling on the God of Jacob, you know, and like Moses and all of these things, like that truth that you're singing is like, it's evident even within your own life with the way that you worship. And even noting something with you where you were saying, Craig, like the piano and stuff, bro, like Jen and I talk about this all the time. The way that you lead worship without even having to open your mouth on keys, like you playing shows an example of musicians having to like lead worship.
Going off of what Ruth said, The one thing I actually learned from Sharon from the workshop, I was actually talking to her about her and her playing the guitar and all that stuff, and we were in this tiny little, I guess it was the prayer, weird prayer moment that we had during the workshop, but we were talking and it was me, Sharon, Anna, and Salima, and we were all just in a prayer group together. And Anna was saying how like one time like she's only fairly new to the worship team and she plays the guitar, and she was playing guitar one day for Maine, and Billy came up to her, our senior pastor, Pastor Billy, came up to her and one of the other instrumentalists, and was like, "Oh, you can just see that she's worshiping God so passionately up there." Right. And well, Anna thought the entire time whenever she's on Maine that no one's looking at her. And it's like, oh, like my worship doesn't really matter here because I'm just in the back and all the vocalists are at the front and they're singing and they're like the face. And so no one's really seeing me. But then when Billy, like the senior pastor, comes up to you and says like, oh, I can see you worshiping God. She's like, I didn't know that like my worship can be expressed so noticeably just by playing an instrument. And then I talked to Sharon about it and she's like, yeah, like worship is, even in scripture it says in the psalm that it's like the playing of the lyre and the clanging of the cymbals, you know, and even if it's not words, you're worshiping God through the music that you play. And it's I don't know, maybe you guys can touch on it a little bit better because I don't necessarily play an instrument. I'm mostly a vocalist. And so like, what is it like for you guys to worship just on an instrument?
You can't fake it. Like worship needs to be like coming from the heart. Like I always tell like younger musicians, like, what if I take away your instrument? Will you still be worshiping? Like, are you still gonna be like worshiping God, like raising your hands, crying for God, or are you like looking at the other piano player, like, oh, you missed this one, or the other? It's like for me, I was like, because going back, I was like, no, I don't have that big talent, but I want to serve God. Like my mantra is like, God send me. That's why I want to have that. I want to have that skin tat where it says like send me. I'm always like on the go. I know I don't have that much, but when I follow God, He's gonna bless me. But be careful that nurture it. Like He's gonna give you something, but take care of that talent. Like grow it. It doesn't stop there. But yeah, the worship thing, you can't fake it. Like even though you're far back playing acoustic or something, people will notice you. Like, are you worshiping or just focused on the chords? Like, because you didn't learn it, right?
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, right? Like if you come in on a Sunday or even on a rehearsal unprepared, instead of worshiping, you're like thinking about what you're doing. So that's one key thing, is for you to actually like come in prepared, and that's how you free yourself, right? Like if you're prepared, then you're free. You don't have to think about all these other things. And so it doesn't really, I don't think it changes if you're a vocalist or if you're a singer or a musician, regardless of, you know, what instrument you play. Right? You can even play like crappy instruments and still worship, and it wouldn't matter. Right? I remember back in the Philippines, we had a group called Glory Fall. Shout out Glory Fall. They're still in there. So we would do like, no, what the group does is we would do like worship retreats at churches for free. Everything's for free. So it's not like we're charging anything. That was the ministry, basically, is for us to go to this like smaller churches that, you know, that needs help with their music ministry. So what we do is we come in, but we don't bring any instruments. So we bring whatever instrument that they have.
My goodness.
So just to show you, you know, whatever you have, it doesn't have to, you don't need to have good instruments. So we teach them with whatever instrument they have. Like if it's a Casio keyboard that doesn't have anything, then that's what I'll use. Right? And just to show you, know, it's the same way. Like you don't need all this like good instruments. You can worship with whatever. It can be a makeup drum kit and still be joyful and worshipful when you play it.
Still be thankful for what you have,
Right? So it doesn't really matter if you're a singer. It all looks the same.
Right.
Because
Like it's your worship is you and God,
Yeah.
and that's really it.
Right. Something it just came up in my head while you were saying that, because I think this is what we wrestled with even when we were talking as a group for Hub Worship, is the balance between
spirituality and musicality.
Yes, like the spirituality portion of like, yes, you can worship with everything that you have, and whatever you have, like God will take that, and He will receive that, and yes, like it's between you and God, Amen. And the expectation for practice and musicality and skillfulness, and how to balance that. Especially, like, I think even because we're all leaders here, is especially as leaders how to teach and to emphasize both to our team and to our congregation, right? And I don't know, balancing that.
Yeah.
I think before I can answer that, like if you ask me before, I'm gonna answer that like 50-50. But now, I've been thinking about that question for since we had
Since
the
week?
since
Yeah.
we had our
The
workshop.
Yeah.
And then I was like thinking, am I worth 50% of what God is giving me? I think for me personally, it's just like 99% and 1% of you. You just need to commit to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it does. I mean, your talents won't matter because God can take that away from you in an instant, right? And but if you nurture it, like even the slightest faith that you have, like I'm gonna be good in this, like if you sow in it, God's gonna multiply it,
Yeah.
and that 1% will like of you will, like, can you imagine the parable of the talents,
Right.
right? Because that guy just didn't like put his talents on the ground,
Yeah.
but he was like so faithful on what his father has given him,
Right.
but it grew, right? So for me personally, I know some of you may object, like I'm only like a 1% of that, then but I'm taking care of it.
Yeah.
That 1% of that I have, I'm
Yeah.
taking care of it,
Yeah.
so that God will bless me, and then it will grow, and then eventually I'll get to a point that I can like. Sometimes I still get tense. I will still make mistakes up on the
course.
stage, right? Because I'm still human. But yeah, I will practice. I will practice a lot.
Yeah.
I'm always telling you that
Right.
because I know I'm bad. I will practice a lot. That's my edge. I will practice like hours and hours just to get it. But yeah.
Craig thinks
I'm
he's so bad, but
No,
he's
no, I'm
amazing.
not downing.
Aren't-
I'm not
like-
downing.
Every
myself.
time he says that, I'm gonna be like, don't say
Yeah.
that about my friend.
Exactly.
But I think one way to frame it, it's not like 50-50 of bearing, because what we talked about in
Yeah.
there was like being spiritual, working on your spiritual thing and like your practical thing,
Yeah.
right? Your talent. I think we should look at it as a 50-50, but I think we should look at it as them being both together, but leading with the spiritual. I was just reading Nehemiah. It's interesting because Nehemiah was in this like really good position as the king's was he like a wine taster,
Cupbearer.
cupbearer,
Yeah.
and a he's like a trusted advisor, right?
Yeah.
Was in this really good position, and he heard about the state of Judah, of what's going on in there, and he had this like burden in his heart, right? So what he did was he didn't ask the king, but the king saw it. He was like, "What's going on with you? You look so
Yeah.
down," right? And it was like, "Oh, it's because of this, this, this." And in the verse, I think it says, in prayer, he asked the king if he can go back and rebuild the walls,
Yeah.
right, in the city.
Right.
So, and throughout, right, you'd see that it's always, every time, even in opposition, he'd always start with the spiritual, lead with it. He'd always pray about it. I think even before that, he fasted first before he had that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like in the scripture, it always acknowledges that he would always rely on God first, like seek God first, and then do the practical thing.
Yeah.
So he would pray first, pray about it, and then he would go out at night to do the survey and see how they can build up the walls and things like that. I think this is something that we should approach the same way as well. So
Right.
it's not like being 50-50, like what you prefer more,
Right.
but really like leading with the spiritual aspect of it, right? Like doing that first, and then doing the practical things as well on the side, and that's really kind of like, I think that's the better way to frame it instead of like having,
I'm bad at
50-50. And
No, but we
No,
we get your point as well.
we get your point, but that's
Yeah.
also, because I just thought
Perspective.
about that, but
Yeah.
that's also how we all kind of, I feel like that's how I looked at it even when we were
Yeah.
having this
Yeah.
conversation. So I didn't really see it the other way until,
Right.
until after a while, like thinking about it.
Right.
It's like, it's not like half and half. It's like
Right.
what you lead with, right?
Yeah.
So you lead with
Because
it.
one time I was like, thinking about David. Yeah, he was he killed lions and bears, but at the same time he hasn't killed a giant before. But God called him to like fight this one. It was like, is that 50-50?
Right.
It's not 50-50,
Right,
right?
right.
If it's 50-50,
Yeah.
like his talents, he
Yeah.
already have done it, right? But
Yeah.
God chose him, even though he hasn't had any experience at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like four of us, like,
Right.
yeah, God may put you in some point, like, you might doubt yourself, yeah, but God will provide everything for you,
Amen.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to like,
And
you just need to like pound on that.
he kills the
percentage.
giant, and then it was like, it's not me, it's God.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well, that's also what I wanted to touch on. Like, I think within this percentages and that kind of stuff, like if we're talking numbers, I genuinely think that it really is 100% God. Like, I think that all that we can bring is our dedication to God, our spiritual walk, and also our excellence that we want to pour out onto God, right? And also bring the congregation forward within that. That's why for me, it's just like that needs to be utmost, like the most important thing. I think that because we have reverence for God, we practice 100% as well. Like, I
Right.
think it's 100 on both ends. It's not even a 50-50 split. I think it's different things. I think
Right.
it's because this is at 100, like we are so compelled by God, like, and the things that he is doing. And like, we don't want our our disobedience to get in the way. We can't help but be 100% excellence and like 100% like pushing to do that. Not because of our own desires or not coming from our own insecurity, but it's fueled by that 100% reverence for God.
Right.
Because even when I was, because we had this conversation during the workshop, and even the thing that I was reminded of was Moses, right? Like, God still moved, and Moses, like, he said to speak to the rock, and then the water would come. But Moses hit the rock because he put more faith in the staff. And pretend our staff is our talents or something that we're like our doubts or whatever, right? Like, he put more faith in that than he did in God. So he disobeyed him, and then God still made the water come, because in that moment he cared more about the children of Israel receiving that water that they needed, the needs of his children, right? Just like the needs of the congregation, than he did about like disciplining or proving a point to Moses in that way publicly. But Moses wasn't able to see the promised land. And a very big thing that we were saying too was that, like, what are the promised lands that we're missing out on when we just don't do the disciplined thing of practicing and doing the things that we're supposed to do? And what are the promised lands that we're missing out on in leadership development when we go, well, God's got it, so I'm just going to come to practice and I'm going to sing because God moves anyways. God's going to move regardless. As long as there's worshipers in the crowd that need God, God's going to touch their heart in spite of us. But we want to be part of that process. Like, we want to be part of that, like, unity, right? So I would just say it's like, I think it's 100 on both ends, but it's through excellence, one flows into the other.
I think what I wrestle with is that like 100 and 100. Because I think the nervousness that comes for me is still, I don't know, if I'm nervous, am I still just relying on my skills and my capabilities? Like, if I go up there, because like one of the big reasons why me and Ruth, like, we are both worship leaders, but I was asked to be a worship leader just by myself, and I said no. Because I said no.
Well, that's why you co-lead?
Yes.
So
So what happened?
she was on week 2, I was on week 3.
Yes. So what was supposed to happen was, it was supposed to be Cylas, and then me, and then Ruth separately, and then finding someone else for the 4th week. That was kind of what the plan was. And I had told our leaders that I wouldn't, because I did not feel like I was trained or I was prepared or it was kind of like, okay, we don't have anyone, so can you go up there? Because I have the experience, and I did not feel like I said that I wanted to participate in the best that I possibly could. And I do not feel like I'm capable of doing that in the circumstances that we are now, where we don't really know who's going to be on each set. We don't know how, like, we don't really have like a structured way of choosing a band or choosing who's going to be on our sets. And everything was kind of mishmashed everywhere. And I said, like, I don't think I will be able to do that on my own. I said, if I had support, whether it be instrumentally or musically, someone else who was seasoned, I guess, seasoned, then I would be able to do it. And that's why they put me and Ruth together on week 2. And I think there is a part of me that still stands by that decision, because I think there was a part of me there, it's like, oh, like, are you doubting, like, you know, God's ability to work through you? Do you need like a crutch? Like, is that why you asked Ruth? And like, and also there was that people pleasy thing where it's like, oh, I should just do what my leader asked me to do. I should have faith in what they asked me to do. And that's where I feel like it was like I really needed to go to God with it and be like, God, check my heart. And make sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons, and I'm making this decision for the right reasons. And I think, like, genuinely, it was me knowing what my capabilities were and what they weren't. I can truly tell you that even right now, like, I still need to learn, and not like we all do, but I think specifically with worship leadership, especially when it comes to, mostly it's the background stuff, right? If you give me a good band and great musicians and put me up there and say lead, ready, let's go. But that's the thing. It's like, it's the background stuff where it's like, okay, so then this person needs help with this, and this person needs, and we all need to work together, and how, and like that leadership portion is something that I still lack, and I need to grow in, and I feel like I needed.
But you're good though. Like when you're like instructing us.
Yeah.
So I've been so many times like
course.
leading with you, right?
Thank
you
you.
know your stuff, right?
Definitely.
I try.
Like what you told me, like you know your stuff just before you rehearse.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the problem comes right on the
Yeah,
day.
the day.
Or the,
Yeah. That's why I genuinely am so appreciative of our new dynamic, because I'm going to be very real and very honest, where our culture of hub worship was very much like, this is your week, this is my week, all right, let's make sure it's split. Like, oh, okay, well, like I've never been on Cylas' set. I've like
it's
like
crazy.
No, you were supposed to be on that first time I was leading, but we didn't have enough mics. Remember?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
right.
I asked you and Ruth.
Right. But
He
yeah,
asked for 2 sopranos.
oh yeah,
He had
exactly.
0.
No, he has one.
Right. And I like the direction, and I appreciate the direction that we're going, because right now that we've acknowledged the fact that our hub worship culture was not unifying. It was like, even like, I'm going to be very honest, like I had a conversation with Ruth about it where it was even very divisive, where it's like, oh, I'm already on my week, do I have to be on Craig's week, do I have to be on Silas's week, like, oh, I'm like on main that morning, like I don't want to be on their team at the evening. Like, it was very self-serving on my end, and also very divisive of like your team versus my team. Like we
We
jokingly
called Cylas out because for the
Ruth,
viewers,
careful with the hate stuff.
Cylas is very talented.
yes
Very talented at gathering
I'm waiting for
people
the butt.
to come
Right.
onto his team.
Right.
And because he is talented at doing this, he will invite people who are scheduled on other teams. And that was an area of frustration that happened with our week, because there were individuals who maybe
Declining our
like
week.
Right.
declined our week and joined Silas's week,
Right.
but they're set on schedule for our week, right?
Right.
So in our head, I'm just like, bro, like why is Cylas doing this? And the thing is, because there wasn't a relationship there, and because
Yeah.
of the already built tribalism that you were talking about
Right.
with the teams,
Right.
it immediately went to the place of he just really wants to have like a really full big band, but by doing that, like he's kind of like messing with our band dynamic. But in actuality, it was what you were talking about earlier, where it was, I mean, I want a full band because there's moments where I'm like, it's a lot to lead, and it's just like, it makes me feel more comfortable to have that. And hearing the emotion behind it and the intention behind it wasn't to make your band better or bigger or whatever, but it was just because it was coming from a place of like, I just wanted to be fuller because I felt like I needed that to assist me in worship leading, made me realize, how many more things am I judging right off the bat in worship leadership, or have we been just doing that in general out of just what we think is happening instead of actually talking to each other, which is why I love this dynamic, because we're actually talking. We're actually having conversations now. You know the heart behind what we do. We know the heart behind what you guys do. And there isn't a you guys, us thing anymore. It's just what can we do as a leadership team.
And also because during that, well, I don't look at other teams really, so I don't know if someone else is like.
To be fair, y'all are also fairly new to the Hub Worship team, because we were on the teams before we even became leaders. So like, and we were also in young adults when this was happening, and then you guys hopped on and joined.
So that's why when you told me, I think it was on Sunday, was it last Sunday? You were like, "Oh, we don't have a keyboard player." I was like, "Just go ask Craig." Like, Craig, and she was like, "No, but Craig's already playing." I'm like, "No, Craig would still play." I was like, "Ask Craig," and then I asked Craig for her, and Craig was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And I remember someone was like asking that easy. It's like, why would I say no? Because that's my point. Like, some people. They get so tired of the ministry, like even though they're scheduled like 2-3 times in 1 month, they became so tired of like, man, I'm serving again. You know, I'm came from work. I'm like, what? Is that supposed to be your attitude when it comes to like, you know what? I always pictured this myself. When I was playing back in the Philippines, I always pictured myself like there's a long stairs and I'm on the like first step and I'm worshiping God. That's what I always picture when I'm serving, when I'm doing ministry. So I was like when I encounter people, like sometimes it's acceptable. I'm not downing them. It's like it's acceptable to be tired sometimes. We all have problems, we have family stuff, and you all go through some things. But at the same time, it's a privilege to serve God. Like when you ask me, like play for why not? It's my privilege. It's not to show my talents.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's also why, like Jen, you were talking about, like, put me on a stage, I can lead, I can sing. I think the behind the scenes leadership stuff is super important because of stuff like this. Because when there's no plans, when there's ambiguity, when people don't know when they're scheduled, when they're not scheduled, when there aren't supports, you've got people that are standing up there like, I need somebody else to do this with me. Or you've got people standing up there that are like, I need a fuller band because I'm not sure I'm capable, or, you know, whatever. And then you also get that tribalism started, or people burn out and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I love worship. I love it. Like, I will sit and sing to Jesus like 24/7 if I could. And if I didn't need to work, like, I'd just be like, Jesus. But that being said, like, burnout is a real thing. And because people don't do the behind the scenes and the build up and all that type of stuff, and they're not like diligent within that type of stuff, it becomes I'm scheduled for like 6 weeks in a row, or I'm like doing like 4 different things here, and like I got to do this and this and this, which sometimes takes out the joy, because you feel as though you have to, versus if it's just communication and conversation and a, hey, would you like to? Then it's like oh, wait, this is my responsibility, which is why communication with us is so important.
But the thing is, like, what are you doing after the worship? Are you still seeking God after that? Because for me, it's like after worship, like I still like worship behind the scenes, because that fuels my thing. Because when I'm up there, I won't like cry myself, like frustrate on the floor, because I already did that. Because I'm already called like to do to lead the people. Right?
It's from outpour of your own personal.
You need to fill yourself like with the Word of God after what your assignment. But because for example, like you're in church on Sunday, and then for 6 days you've been cursing your office mate, and you've been,
Yeah.
because I've met some musicians like that.
Yeah.
Right.
He said, one time there's a drummer, like he was like playing for church for the whole time, but for the whole rest of the day he's like cursing someone.
Yeah.
What kind of worshiper is that?
Right.
Right? It needs to be coming from your heart, because I like everyone's attitude. Cylas still corrects me if I'm doing wrong notes, because his hearing is very good. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're doing the wrong thing. Like, am I? Yeah. You just need to be
Right.
humble, right?
Yeah.
You need help because
Yeah.
it comes from God.
Yeah.
Mainly it comes from God.
It has to.
Yeah.
Right before we wrap up, I just want to kind of get, because what's great is of having 3 guests is I get to hear different things from each person, and I want to wrap up by just giving each of you guys an opportunity to share maybe 30 seconds of your heart for the viewers when it comes to worship, when it comes to heart posture, and just how you can encourage whoever is listening.
Heart question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, I think the main thing that I would like to share, kind of like to piggyback in what we were just talking about, is that when you're on stage, you shouldn't. I heard this somewhere, which is really good too. That when you're on stage, that's not where you should expect not that it's not where you expect to receive, but you don't really get your
not the focal
breakthroughs well on stage.
Yeah.
That's not the main thing.
Yeah.
Like you should be getting that when you're worshiping outside of the stage, and the stage is the overflow of that.
Yes.
Right.
And that's kind of like where you don't get a burnout, right? You don't have burnouts, because you serving on Sundays is an overflow of what you're
Yeah.
actually doing throughout
Right.
the whole week.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of the other way around. And I feel like, I don't know if it's like a lot of people are kind of like doing it the other way around, where the Sunday is the main thing,
Yeah.
where it shouldn't be.
Right.
So, yeah, and because worship is an everyday thing anyway, and yeah, so that's it.
Amen.
Greg?
For me, yeah. I don't know. Maybe seek God first, and all these things shall be added unto you. Like mainly seek God. If you're gonna be a worshiper, seek God before you learn your music,
Yeah.
because it's not mainly about your talents, not mainly about the music at all.
Mm.
Even though the songs are very good,
Yeah.
the words sucks.
Right.
It's not God.
Right.
But if you seek God first, like, you'll never know. You'll never know. Yeah, you'll be
You
filled.
still get to
Yeah.
worship even if you forget the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because you're seeking God.
Glory.
Even if you get the words wrong, you sing
And
the
then
wrong song.
and then the Holy Spirit, will just remind you. Like,
Amen.
hey,
Amen.
I think
Or-
for me, if there's one thing, it would be encouragement. Even from my own story, I was so eager to do worship because, again, my mom was a choir director and all of this other stuff, and she would write music and stuff. So for me, I was like, yeah, like I really want to get out there and like lead worship, and I felt as though I had this gifting and stuff, and the door was closed on me multiple times, and I was overlooked multiple times. But even in the little things where I was being overlooked, or even in the little things, like I think that an element was like God keeping me hidden to like work on my craft, because years and years and years of just singing harmony had taught me how to hear those parts so that I can now teach people how to sing harmony. And like I struggled singing melody for a very long time because I just always kept singing harmony because that was all I was put. I was never trusted to lead a song. And the frustrations through that season brought me to kind of come to God and be like, well, God, like I want to lead. But then when he gave me the opportunity to lead, I was like, oh my gosh, it's the forgetfulness. So I would say, remember your story, remember the things that you're taught, even in the places where you feel like you're being overlooked, and God will work those things out for the good of those who love him. And I love Jesus, so I know he'll work it out for me.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's like the highlight of it. That's my worship journey.
Right.
Doesn't matter if you're being overlooked by man. Like if God sees you and calls you, then he equips you.
Right. Amen. I think for me, just I echo everything y'all said. But I think for me, echo in my soul. Oh Lord.
Yeah, literally.
I think it's addition to all those things, one thing that I've learned from you guys, but also just in this new transition for our team, and our team being all of us and everyone in all of our teams, that being one unit, right? Is showing love and grace and unity towards each other, as like remembering that even, yes, we go to God first and all of those things. I think it's going to God first and seeking relationship with God, and then seeking relationship with each other, and then the music. That's just one thing that I've learned, because I think once we start putting the music before our relationships, it starts messing up with our unity.
Yeah.
Right. And I've seen that, and we just talked about it, where like we started making judgment calls based on our focus on it being the music being the focus,
Yep.
rather than being our hearts being the focus.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that we are slowly changing that dynamic, where it's like, yes, our relationship with God is first, and then our relationship with each other is second, and then how we play our instruments and sing our songs up on the stage is third, because that it can only be good and loving when we are showing that to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if we are supposed to be worship leaders at our church and in our congregations, it's so hard because we can be so tempted to become performers rather than worshipers.
Yeah.
But to focus on our, like Cylas said earlier, to lead with the spirituality and lead with our relationship with God first, and then be motivated by that to show love and care and concern and grace towards each other, on and off the stage.
Yep. That part
Yeah,
right
right?
there, on and off the
On
stage.
and off the stage.
Yeah.
And then when we're on the stage, that we are able to overflow, like you said, Silas, overflow in that heart posture that we've already set before anything happens, when we hold our instruments or hold our mics.
Yeah.
And so, and that's just kind of what I've really received from everything that one we've talked about today, but also we've been discussing over the course of time. And I know that we're going to have a lot more conversations surrounding this topic with the four of us, in our privacy, in our own little circle.
Over barbecue.
Over barbecue.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Texan barbecue or Korean barbecue?
Ooh,
I don't mind either.
There you go. Good answer.
either one.
I was
But
gonna
yeah.
say Jen's barbecue.
My
Oh,
barbecue?
yeah,
Just at my
Korean.
house?
Yeah.
We'll just...
Because it's her podcast.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh my God, we should have a mukbang with...
Yo, I'm just there
Yes.
to eat. Like, don't
Yeah,
give me the
right?
mic,
It would be
Yeah.
great. It would be great. But yeah, and I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on here and
Yeah,
just
no.
being a part of this. You guys are
Privilege.
amazing, and I'm just privileged to be worship leaders with all of you guys. And I know that just like how we are on stage, as we speak with these mics, I know that like your words are blessing someone, and I'm just so honored to be able to give you guys a platform to do that. And so, anyways, that is the end of our episode. I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating. Leave comments. Leave little hearts for us in the comments. And if you have any questions, even individually, like I'm down to have us back for season 3. Like I think that would be dope to see how we change over the course of the summer. But yeah, like leave questions for Cylas, for Craig, for Ruth, even for myself, and we are happy and honored to answer any questions that you guys may have. So thank you guys again, and I will check you guys on the next one.
Nice.
Bye.
Leave
Bye.
question.
Bye.